Nora Blake pushed through the glass doors of Lamont Montclair with nothing but stubborn hope. The glittering restaurant worshipped one tyrant, Veronica Langford, the millionaire's wife who could end careers with one cold word. When Nora respectfully asked if she could pour water at Veronica's table that first night, the entire dining room went silent. What Veronica didn't realize was that Nora had already survived grief that would crush most people. And tonight, Veronica was about to learn that some people will not kneel, no matter how much power you wave around. Before we dive back in, tell me where you're watching from, and don't forget to hit subscribe for more stories. Nora Blake stood outside Lamont Montclair, studying the gold script etched across the smoked glass doors. The restaurant rose above her like a castle. 3 stories of old-world charm wrapped in ruthless modern money. Inside, the air smelled of lilies and expensive wine. Marble floors gleamed like mirrors beneath crystal chandeliers. Servers in flawless uniforms glided between tables, their movements rehearsed, their faces composed, every gesture polished for rich eyes. Nora had worked in decent restaurants before, even upscale places, but nothing close to this. Lamont Montclair wasn't just somewhere to eat. It was where the city's elite came to be seen, judged, and envied over braised lamb. She slipped through the staff entrance into a different universe. Fluorescent lights buzzed over narrow hallways. Servers rushed past with loaded trays, curses muttered under their breath. The kitchen doors swung open, releasing heat and Chef Marco's furious roar. A tall woman with warm brown eyes and smooth dark skin approached, hand extended. "You must be Nora. I'm Marina, head hostess. Welcome to organized chaos." Nora shook her hand, grateful for the genuine smile cutting through the tension. Marina led her through twisting back corridors, past shelves stacked with linen, wine crates, and polished silver. She rattled off sections, reservation rules, and the life-or-death importance of accuracy. Glancing at her watch often, her smile tightening with every minute. Manager Ethan Ward's office was cramped and buried in paperwork. He was mid-30s, thin and fidgety, constantly adjusting his tie. When Marina knocked, he brightened at the sight of Nora, then immediately looked like he'd swallowed a problem. "Nora Blake," he said, shaking her hand with an anxious grip. "Welcome. Please, sit." Marina slipped out, leaving Nora alone with Ethan's rustling papers, clicking pen, and awkward throat-clearing as he tried to choose his words. "Your references are excellent," he said finally. "Your application impressed us. We're genuinely glad to have you." His fingers drummed faster. "But I need to be upfront. Tonight will be difficult. We've got several VIPs. One requires special handling." He leaned in, voice dropping like he was passing along classified information. "Veronica Langford will be dining with us." Nora's blank look made him continue. "She's married to Christopher Langford, one of the wealthiest men in the city, regulars here." "Mrs. Langford has very particular standards," Ethan said carefully. "She can be intense. If anything isn't flawless, she will make sure everyone hears about it." His tone said this was about more than good customer service. Ethan's eyes sharpened with urgency. "Do not upset her. Don't contradict her. Don't speak unless she addresses you. If she criticizes you, apologize immediately. If she looks angry, find me right away. Do you understand, Nora?" A chill slid down Nora's spine. She'd handled rude guests and entitled people before, but this felt like a warning about a natural disaster. "I understand," she said quietly. "I'll do everything right." "You'll be support in her section tonight," he added. In the staff locker room, Nora found Marina with two servers, a young guy with mischievous eyes named Caleb and a seasoned woman named Sonia. Their low conversation died the second Nora stepped in, replaced by tense, knowing looks. "He tell you about Veronica?" Sonia asked. Nora nodded, opening her locker. "She's probably not that bad," Nora offered, forcing optimism. All three stared like she'd just announced she enjoyed walking through active minefields for fun. "Last month," Sonia said, "she made a server SOB in the middle of dinner because her water glass was refilled from the wrong side. The girl quit that night." Caleb snorted. "2 months ago, she got someone fired for smiling at her husband." Marina leaned against the lockers, crossing her arms. "Veronica practically owns this place. Not on paper, but in reality. The Langfords bring too much money and attention. If she decides she doesn't like you, Ethan's hands are tied." The hours before service blurred into non-stop training. Nora memorized table numbers and sections, practiced balancing heavy trays until her shoulders burned, and learned the menu like scripture. Chef Marco stormed out once, booming about respecting his food, then vanished in steam. During her short break, Nora slipped out into the cool alley behind the restaurant. She called her younger sister Leah, whose bright 20-year-old voice made Nora's chest ache with responsibility and fierce affection. "How's the fancy job?" Leah chirped. "It's good, really good," Nora said, layering cheer over exhaustion. "The place is gorgeous. Everyone's professional. I think I'll fit here." Leah hesitated. "Does this mean I can enroll again next semester?" Tuition had forced her to pause college after their mom died. Medical bills had devoured everything. Their father had walked out years ago, leaving Nora to be sister, parent, and provider. Every choice now revolved around survival. "Yes," Nora said firmly. "In 2 weeks, I get my first paycheck. We'll cover tuition and books." Leah squealed, and Nora pictured her spinning in their cramped apartment. "Thank you. I'll crush my classes. You'll see." "You already make me proud," Nora said softly. When she hung up, the weight of rent and bills crawled back over her shoulders. By the time dinner service started, the dining room was bathed in candlelight. Guests in designer clothes settled into white linen table fantasies. Servers moved with disciplined grace, voices low and polished, as if chaos didn't exist just beyond the kitchen doors. "She's here," Marina whispered at Nora's elbow. Nora followed her gaze. A woman stood at the entrance, halting, conversation like someone had pressed mute. Veronica Langford wore molten gold, diamonds flashing at her throat and wrists like tiny warning lights. Her dark hair was swept into a precise twist. Her face was striking, beautiful, but edged like a blade. Her gaze swept the room like a queen surveying subjects, cataloging flaws. Beside her, Christopher Langford looked distant, expression calm and oddly detached. Ethan materialized with a smile stretched too wide. "Mr. and Mrs. Langford, always a pleasure. Your table is ready." He led them to the prime spot in the room, perfectly positioned so Veronica could see nearly everything and everyone. "Sonia's got them," Marina murmured. "You're backup only. Water, clearing, quiet support. Watch and follow her lead. No improvising." Nora's pulse kicked up, but she nodded. She watched Sonia approach with a silver water pitcher, smile professional, hands trembling faintly. "Still water, room temperature, lemon on the side, not in the glass," Veronica said, not bothering to look up. "And spotless glasses. Last time there were marks." Sonia apologized and retreated. "Take these," she whispered to Nora. "I need a second." Nora balanced the tray and headed for the Langford table, every lesson replaying in her head. Move smoothly, stay calm, speak only if necessary. She poured for Christopher first, then turned to Veronica. "May I pour your water, ma'am?" Veronica's head turned slowly. For the first time, those sharp eyes settled on Nora, dissecting her. "Do you always talk before you think?" she murmured, voice soft but deadly. Nearby, conversations quieted. Nora froze mid-pour, heat rushing to her face. "I'm sorry, just pour," Veronica cut in. "That's what they pay you for, isn't it?" Nora finished pouring, hand rock steady, despite her churning stomach. "Yes, ma'am, it's my first day," she answered quietly. Veronica's thin smile said, "I can tell." Laughter flickered around the table, the kind that enjoyed watching someone else get burned. Christopher didn't join in. He watched Nora carefully, curiosity in his gaze instead of ridicule. Back at the station, Sonia squeezed Nora's arm. "You did fine. That was mild." The rest of service around the Langford table felt like a battlefield. Every time Nora approached, Veronica found a new fault. Bread not warm enough, wine poured too quickly, footsteps supposedly too loud. Each jab was calculated to cut without screaming. But the more Veronica pressed, the calmer Nora became. Maybe it was stubbornness, maybe Leah's hopeful voice in her memory, maybe grief hardened into steel. She apologized politely, stayed steady, refused to tremble. Every insult slid over that quiet, immovable center. When Veronica was particularly vicious about Nora clearing from the wrong side, Christopher finally spoke. "Veronica, the service has been excellent tonight." Surprise flashed across Veronica's face before it hardened again. "I'm merely offering feedback, darling." "Of course," he replied mildly. He turned to Nora, voice gentle. "You're doing just fine." 3 small words, but spoken by Christopher Langford. In that room, they carried heft. Nora nodded, throat tight, and escaped toward the kitchen where she found Ethan, vibrating with anxiety. "How bad is it?" he asked. "I'm still employed, so not catastrophic," Nora replied. He stared at her like she was some rare species. "You're the first in months who hasn't cried or walked out after meeting Veronica." "I've handled difficult people before," Nora said. "Not like her," Ethan insisted. "She tests new staff until they break. It's sport to her. If you make it through tonight, you can survive anything this place throws at you." Later, Nora locked herself in the staff bathroom and stared into the mirror. Her eyes were tired, hair slipping from its bun, but she wasn't crying. "You are not letting her destroy you," she whispered to her reflection, steadying her breathing. When the Langfords finally left, Veronica sweeping out like departing royalty, and Christopher giving the staff a courteous nod, the entire restaurant exhaled. Even Chef Marco emerged looking drained. Sonia hugged Nora. Caleb raised his water. To Nora, spine of steel, Nora barely heard the toast. Through the front windows, she watched Christopher help Veronica into a sleek black sedan worth more than 5 years of her paycheck. Just before the door closed, Veronica glanced back, her gaze finding Nora's. She smiled. A slow, icy curve that held no warmth at all. Nora went home that night exhausted in a way that went beyond aching feet. She climbed the stairs to her tiny apartment, easing the door open in case Leah slept. Instead, Leah was curled on the couch with a textbook. "How'd it go?" she asked, hopeful eyes big. Nora sank beside her. "Intense," she said honestly, but I'm okay. Leah searched her face, then relaxed. Good, that's what matters. That night, Nora dreamed of chandelier light bouncing off diamonds and a pair of cold eyes that missed nothing. In the morning, she woke with a single thought. I survived day 1. I can survive day 2. She was wrong. Day 2 wasn't about survival, it was about escalation. When Nora arrived, the staff's sideways looks told her something had shifted. Marina pulled her aside. Veronica came for lunch. She asked a lot of questions about you. Nora's stomach knotted. Why? Because you didn't crack, Marina said simply. You were supposed to cry, quit, or screw up so badly Ethan had an excuse. Instead, you stayed calm. Now you're an unsolved puzzle she's obsessed with. That evening, Veronica arrived earlier than usual, draped in deep blue. There was a new sharpness in her gaze when she spotted Nora, hungry, focused. She requested Sonia's section again but added loudly, "And I want the new girl. I'd like to see if last night was a fluke." Veronica launched into attack mode the moment Nora approached. Water too cold. Nora walked too quickly, creating a draft. Napkin folded incorrectly. Christopher remained quiet, observing Nora like she was a particularly compelling book he couldn't put down. You seem awfully confident for someone so inexperienced, Veronica said, rejecting her third glass of perfectly good wine. I'm just trying to give good service, Mrs. Langford, Nora replied. Veronica tilted her head. Are you? Or are you trying to prove something? I'm just doing my job well, Nora said, meeting her gaze without flinching. Surprise flickered over Veronica's face. She'd expected an apology, not a steady answer. Silence stretched. Then Christopher cut in. Maybe we could order now. Back at the station, Sonia grabbed Nora's arm. What are you doing? You can't answer her like that. I didn't argue, Nora said. I just answered. Sonia sighed. You don't understand. The more you push back, the more fixated she'll become. So I'm supposed to apologize for existing? Nora asked quietly. Sonia opened her mouth, then shut it, finally muttering, Maybe you're braver than the rest of us, or maybe you haven't seen how far she'll go yet. Later, Veronica's friend arrived, Grace, all sharp cheekbones and heavy jewelry. She whispered behind her hand, glancing straight at Nora. Who's the new one? Nobody, Veronica said lightly. Just another waitress who thinks she's exceptional. Yet her eyes never stopped tracking Nora. When Nora brought their entrees, Veronica accidentally knocked over her wine. Red spilled across the pristine tablecloth and onto her dress. She gasped dramatically. Look what you've done. Nora hadn't touched the glass, but every head turned toward her anyway. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Langford, Nora said instantly, grabbing napkins. Let me. Don't touch me, Veronica snapped, stepping back. Ethan swooped in, apologizing, promising to comp the meal and pay for cleaning. Christopher guided Veronica toward the restroom, murmuring low. Before they disappeared, Christopher glanced back at Nora. His expression said clearly, this wasn't your fault. Back at the table, Caleb helped her mop up. She did that on purpose, he muttered. I saw. She tipped it herself. Doesn't matter what actually happened, Nora said, feeling tired down to her bones. It matters what everyone thinks happened. Caleb shook his head. Yeah, well, what I think is you're getting screwed. She didn't argue. Closing time found Ethan hunched in his office, rubbing his temples. I know that wasn't your fault, he said when Nora knocked. I watched the whole thing. but she already called to complain. I have to file an incident report." "Am I fired?" Nora asked. "Not yet," Ethan said, guilt thick in his voice. "But you'll keep pushing. Eventually, I won't be able to shield you. The Langfords mean too much to this place." That knowledge stung more than the incident itself. Nora walked out into the night feeling equal parts anger and resolve. Veronica wanted her gone, expected her to fold. But Nora had watched their mother die slowly, fought insurance agents, kept Leah housed and fed. She'd already sacrificed her own hospitality degree. She'd given up dreams once. She wasn't surrendering this job, too. Over the next week, Veronica came in 4 times, far more than usual. Every visit brought new tests, criticism of Nora's perfectly neat hair, complaints about her grating voice, impossible demands no one could predict. Something unexpected happened, though. The staff began closing ranks around Nora. Sonia coached her through difficult interactions. Caleb ran interference whenever Veronica's requests veered toward absurd. Even perpetually irritable Chef Marco started calling her the only backbone in this entire damn building. "You know what I think?" Marco said, ladling soup with violent precision. "I think Miss Moneybags is scared of you." Nora laughed. "Scared of me? You don't bow," he said. "Everyone else treats her like royalty. You treat her like a customer. Rich people hate feeling ordinary." The breaking point came on a slammed Friday night. Every table was booked, walk-ins turned away, the kitchen drowning in orders. Veronica arrived without a reservation, expecting her table. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Langford," Marina said. "We're fully booked, but we do have a lovely window table." "I don't want a window table," Veronica said coolly. "I want my table." It was occupied by a family celebrating their daughter's graduation. Ethan was about to move them when Nora stepped forward. "Mrs. Langford, may I show you the window table while you wait? It has a beautiful view, and I can bring complimentary champagne right away." Veronica's gaze snapped to Nora like a predator spotting prey. "I didn't ask for your opinion." "I know, ma'am. I'm just trying to offer the best option." "If you want to help get me my table," Veronica replied, voice sharpening. "I understand your frustration," Nora said evenly. "But that table is currently occupied by guests with reservations as well. The window table truly is just as lovely." The restaurant had gone silent, every ear straining. "Are you arguing with me?" Veronica asked softly. Nora could feel Ethan's panic from across the room. "No, ma'am," she answered. "I'm giving you the best choice we have." Veronica stepped closer, perfume heavy and expensive. "You're very bold for someone in your position." "I'm just doing my job," Nora replied. "Your job is to do what I tell you," Veronica murmured. "My job is to serve all our guests well and fairly," Nora said, voice still calm. The words hung in the air like a live wire. For a beat, no one moved. Christopher laid a hand on Veronica's arm. "Veronica, let's take the window table. We're causing a scene." Her face flushed, jaw tight. Then she smiled that dangerous smile. "Of course, darling. The window table will be fine." She looked at Nora. "For now." As Nora led them, she heard Grace whisper, "She's got nerve." "She certainly does," Veronica replied softly, "but nerve can be broken." Christopher caught Nora's eye as he sat, his look a confusing mix of respect and warning she couldn't quite parse. After service, Nora collapsed in the break room, every muscle throbbing. Sonia dropped beside her. "You know she's never going to stop," Sonia said. "This won't magically improve." I know, Nora replied. Then why keep pushing back? Why not just apologize and let her steamroll you? Nora thought of Leah's text earlier. Got an A on my math exam. Thanks for believing in me. She thought of their mother, working multiple jobs and still insisting that dignity mattered. Because if I let her break me, Nora said, what's the point of any of this? Sonia squeezed her hand. You're either the bravest woman I've ever met or the most stubborn. Can't I be both? Nora asked with a tired smile. Walking home, she couldn't shake the memory of Veronica's cold, satisfied smile. It felt like the real game had only just begun. Across town, in a luxury penthouse, Veronica stood at a floor-to-ceiling window, wine in hand, city lights glittering below. Grace's earlier comment echoed, Christopher seems awfully interested in that little waitress of yours. The idea was ridiculous, and yet it dug under her skin. Of course, Christopher wouldn't risk his empire, reputation, and carefully curated life over a nobody in a black uniform. But Veronica hadn't kept her position by ignoring potential threats, and Nora Blake was quickly turning into one. Christopher emerged from their marble bathroom. What are you thinking about? Nothing important, Veronica said smoothly, sliding into bed, just planning our week. In reality, her mind was already moving, mapping weaknesses, rehearsing conversations, plotting strategies. Everyone has a breaking point. She merely had to discover Nora's. Over the following weeks, Veronica's fixation sharpened into something colder. Then came the announcement that changed everything. Veronica would host a private dinner at Lamont Montclair for the city's most elite. 20 guests, 5 courses, curated down to the last seat. When the reservation list went up, every staff member deflated at once. Nora scanned it and felt her stomach plummet. She'd been assigned to the Langford table. She requested you, Ethan said, looking sick. I tried to switch it, but she insisted. Said she wanted to give you a chance to prove yourself. Caleb muttered, That's not a chance. That's a trap. That evening, the dining room was transformed. White orchids flowed down the tables, crystal glassware sparkled like stars, and the air buzzed with money and carefully controlled laughter. Guests discussed charity galas, private jets, and investment portfolios like grocery lists. Veronica directed it all like theater. Christopher arrived separately, his tailored suit failing to hide how tired he looked. He nodded politely to Nora, something almost apologetic in his eyes. Good evening, Mrs. Langford, Nora said, approaching with a water tray. May I? Not yet, Veronica cut in. Without looking. Wait until I'm ready. So Nora waited. 5 minutes. 10. She stood with the tray balanced, every other server pretending not to notice. Finally, Veronica turned. Now you may pour. Nora did. Hands steady. Veronica smiled brightly at the table. She'll be serving us tonight. I personally requested her. I believe in giving new staff opportunities, Veronica continued. Tone sugary. To the guests, it sounded generous. To Nora, it was a loaded gun on the table. Throughout the first course, Veronica gave contradictory instructions, then sighed about Nora's struggle to meet her standards. In the kitchen, Chef Marco plated the second course, seared scallops, like precious artwork. She's torturing you out there, he said without looking up. I know, Nora replied. You going to quit? He asked. No, she said. Good, he grunted. Then make me proud. Don't let that witch win. Nora served the scallops, having triple-checked every dietary note. As she set Veronica's plate down, Veronica recoiled. "This isn't what I ordered. The menu lists, I clearly said no shellfish," Veronica said to the table. "I suppose I assumed too much competence." The word hit like a slap. Nora took the plate back. "I'll have something else prepared right away." "Don't bother. I've lost my appetite," Veronica said dramatically. In the kitchen, Ethan was already on the phone. Crisis managing. Sonia leaned close. "She absolutely ordered scallops. I took the call. She's lying." "Then why aren't you calling her out?" Sonia whispered. Nora thought about it. She could demand they check the reservation notes, publicly expose Veronica's lie in front of her hand-picked guests. But then what? "Because it won't change anything," Nora said. "But staying calm might." The third course went marginally smoother until the wine. Veronica had selected an obscenely expensive vintage. As Nora poured, following every step of proper wine service, Veronica lifted a hand. "Too fast." Nora slowed. "Now too slow," Veronica said. "Has no one trained you?" Nora finished the pour, jaw clenched. Around the table, people shifted, discomfort showing. Even among the ultra-wealthy, Veronica's cruelty was becoming obvious. "Veronica, the wine is fine," Christopher said quietly. "I wasn't asking you," she snapped. His gaze cooled. "Even so, the service has been excellent." Something dangerous flickered behind Veronica's eyes. Nora realized this fight wasn't just about her. It was another battlefield in some long-running war between husband and wife. Veronica pasted on a bright smile. "Of course, how silly of me to fuss." But her eyes promised, "This isn't over." During the main course, Veronica escalated. She asked Nora to describe the duck's preparation in detail, then cut her off with, "You're boring everyone." She kept dropping her napkin, making Nora bend for it again and again like a trained servant in a play. "What did you do before this?" Veronica asked sweetly. "I was studying hospitality management," Nora said. "I left school to deal with family issues." "So, no degree," Veronica summarized. "No formal training, and yet here you are, serving the city's best, learning on the job, I suppose." "I'm learning every day," Nora said, refusing to sound ashamed. "Clearly not fast enough," Veronica replied. Conversation around the table had stalled. Everyone watched the exchange. Nora felt anger clawing up her throat, but she swallowed it down. "I'm doing my best, Mrs. Langford." Veronica laughed, cold and amused. "How American! As if effort matters more than results." That was when Christopher rose, not dramatically, just decisively. "Excuse me," he said. "I need some air." He walked toward the terrace, leaving a stunned hush behind him. Veronica's carefully curated poise cracked for a split second. White, then flushed red. "Well," she said brightly, too brightly, "my husband has apparently forgotten his manners this evening." After a moment, low conversations resumed, but the mood had shifted. Sympathies were sliding away from her. During dessert prep, Veronica disappeared to the restroom. Grace leaned in to the others. "She's been so stressed." "You know how it is," she stage whispered. But the glances bouncing around the table said something else. They'd all just seen too much. Veronica returned, makeup flawless, eyes harder than ever. "Dessert service," she said to Nora, "and please try not to ruin it." Nora presented the chocolate soufflé chef Marco had labored over. She placed each plate gently, saving Veronica's for last. As Nora set the final dessert down, Veronica's hand shot toward Nora's wrist. Later, Nora would understand. Veronica had been planning something all night. a final explosion big enough to justify demanding Nora's firing forever. In Veronica's eyes was calculation, not clumsiness, but months of navigating crowded floors had honed Nora's reflexes. Her free hand came up instinctively, intercepting Veronica's wrist with gentle but firm pressure. Veronica's hand stopped mid-reach, suspended between them. Time seemed to freeze. Somewhere, a fork clinked loudly against porcelain. Nora looked Veronica straight in the eye. Her voice was soft, but carried through the room. "Ma'am, please don't put your hands on the staff. No anger, no wobble. Just professional, unshakable truth." She released Veronica's wrist and stepped back. Silence swallowed the dining room. Servers halted mid-step. Even Marco hovered in the kitchen doorway. Then Christopher re-entered from the terrace, taking in the tableau with one sweeping glance. "Good girl," he said quietly, approval unmistakable to those nearest. Veronica's face cycled through shock, fury, humiliation, and something that looked suspiciously like fear. Her composure shattered. She shoved back her chair so hard it scraped. "You're fired!" she screamed, pointing at Nora. "You attacked me in front of witnesses. I want her arrested. She's not fired," Christopher said, voice like ice. "And she didn't attack anyone. She prevented an employee from being grabbed, which, if I'm not mistaken, violates several labor laws." Murmurs rippled through the room. Veronica stared at him, stunned. "Christopher, you can't be serious." "I'm completely serious," he replied. "The young woman asked you not to touch her. That's reasonable." "I'm your wife," Veronica said, incredulous. "Which gives you many privileges," Christopher answered calmly, "but not the right to lay hands on staff." The silence thickened. Nora stood frozen, heart pounding loud in her ears. Ethan looked ready to faint. The socialites whispered behind manicured hands, already scripting tomorrow's brunch. "Gossip," Grace stammered. "I'm sure Veronica didn't mean anything. She was just trying to get the girl's attention." "I know exactly what she meant," Christopher cut in. He turned to Nora, gaze kind. "I apologize on my wife's behalf. Your service tonight has been outstanding, and you handled a difficult situation with remarkable grace." Then he faced Veronica. "We're leaving." Veronica glanced around the table, at friends whose opinions defined her world. In their eyes she saw judgment, pity, and hungry fascination with the scandal. This dinner was supposed to solidify her dominance. Instead, it had exposed her ugliness. "This isn't over," she hissed at Nora as she grabbed her purse. "Yes," Christopher said firmly. "It is." He steered her toward the exit, his grip more restraining than affectionate. As they left, the restaurant erupted into hushed conversations and buzzing phones. Some guests lingered, eager to witness the aftermath. Others departed quickly, already composing anonymous gossip posts. Nora shook where she stood, adrenaline draining. Sonia rushed over, hugging her tight. "I can't believe you just did that," she whispered. "Honestly, neither can I," Nora replied. Ethan approached, still pale. "Are you okay?" "I think so," Nora said, voice wavering. "Am I actually fired?" "I don't think anyone besides Mr. Langford can make that call," Ethan said slowly. "And he seemed very clear." Chef Marco handed Nora a glass of water. "Drink. You look like you might hit the floor," he said gruffly. The staff gathered around, forming a protective circle. They all knew she'd just done what none of them had ever dared. Stood up to Veronica Langford in front of everyone who mattered. The aftermath hit the city fast. By morning, Gossip columns were buzzing with blind items about a socialite's meltdown at an exclusive restaurant. By afternoon, grainy phone videos circulated in private chats. By evening, the story had reached every corner of high society. The narrative was clear. Veronica Langford had lost control, screamed at a waitress, tried to grab her, and been openly contradicted by her husband. For a woman whose life depended on composure and absolute social dominance, it was a public disaster. Nora stayed home the next day. Ethan called and suggested she take the day off while things settled. She spent it on the couch, jumping at every notification, wondering if she'd still have a job by week's end or a lawsuit. Leah made tea and tucked herself beside Nora. "You stood up for yourself," Leah said. "That's not something to regret." "I know," Nora answered. "I'm just scared." "Of what?" Leah asked. Nora stared at the ceiling. Whatever comes next, women like Veronica don't just accept defeat. She was right. That evening, Ethan called. "You need to come in tomorrow," he said. "Mr. Langford wants to speak with you." Nora's blood went cold. "About what?" "He didn't say," Ethan replied, "but I don't think it's bad. He requested a private meeting in his upstairs office. That's not how people get fired." The next morning, Nora put on her best black dress. Simple, professional, nothing flashy. At Lamont Montclair, she was directed to a private third-floor office she'd never seen. Christopher sat behind a massive desk, reading documents. "Miss Blake," he said as she knocked. "Thank you for coming. Please sit." Nora sat, clasping her hands to hide their tremble. Up close, Christopher looked more worn than he had downstairs. Faint lines at his eyes, a heaviness that had nothing to do with money. For a moment, he just studied her, then spoke. "I owe you an apology," he said. It wasn't what Nora expected. "I've known about my wife's behavior for a long time, the way she bullies staff, uses fear to control rooms. I told myself it wasn't my place to step in. I was wrong." He leaned back, expression tired. "What happened at that dinner was inexcusable. I'm sorry you were put in that position." Nora swallowed. "I appreciate that, sir. But honestly, I'm most worried about whether I still have a job." A small, genuine smile touched his mouth. "You do," he said. "In fact, I'd like to promote you." Nora blinked. "Promote me?" "I've watched you since your first night," he continued. "The way you handle pressure, treat people with respect and stay composed even when someone is relentlessly cruel. Those qualities are rare." He pulled out a folder. "I'd like to offer you the assistant manager position under Ethan. The pay is significantly higher, and there's room to advance." Nora's thoughts scrambled. "Why me?" she asked. His eyes grew serious. "Because I need people I can trust, and because—" He paused, choosing his words. "My wife is under investigation for serious financial misconduct. Fraud, specifically. The night she tried to grab you, she was reaching for a receipt she'd dropped. One she'd signed. I need to know. Did you see any papers in her hand?" Nora's heart hammered. "I don't think so," she said slowly. "You may not have realized what they were," Christopher replied. "But did you notice her handling papers that night? Anything she seemed desperate to hide?" Nora thought back to the chaos at dessert. There had been a moment, just before Veronica lunged, when she'd hurriedly shoved something back into her purse. At the time, Nora had assumed it was lipstick or a compact. "She did have papers," Nora said. "She stuffed them away like she didn't want anyone to see." Christopher nodded. "Those papers were forged charity documents. Proof she's been siphoning money from several foundations. When you stopped her hand, she panicked because she thought you'd seen them." He folded his hands. "Miss Blake, whether you realize it or not, you've stepped into something much bigger than a dinner service. Mr. Langford, I didn't really see anything specific. I had no idea." "I know you didn't," Christopher said, "but my wife doesn't. To her, you're no longer just an irritating server. You're a possible witness." A cold shiver slid down Nora's spine. "What does that mean?" "It means you're in danger," Christopher replied. "To Veronica, threats are things you erase, not negotiate with." His gaze was steady, almost apologetic, but utterly serious. He pulled a card from his wallet and slid it across the desk. "This is my personal attorney's direct line. If anything happens, she approaches you, you feel watched. Anything off, call immediately." Nora picked up the card with shaking fingers. "Why help me?" Christopher's shoulders sagged. "I've watched Veronica wreck people for sport for 15 years. I kept pretending it wasn't my problem because confronting her was harder. Our marriage has always been more contract than romance," he admitted. "I told myself everyone she hurt would bounce back, that they were strong enough. But you're different, you're honest, and I won't watch her ruin you. If you know she's committing fraud, why not expose her yourself?" Nora asked. "I tried. 3 separate times over the last 6 years," he said. "Every attempt, she either made the evidence vanish or destroyed the people who spoke up." He moved to the window, looking older than he had downstairs. "She has contacts, money, and absolutely no conscience when it comes to weaponizing either. This time, though, she's facing multiple investigations, state, federal, even her own boards. The walls are closing in, and she feels it," Christopher continued. "And yes, I think she'll come after you. She'll do anything to shield herself, including targeting anyone she thinks might testify." Nora rose slowly, legs unsteady. "I appreciate the promotion and the warning, but I need time to decide." "Of course," he said. "Take whatever time you need. Just, please, Nora, be careful. Veronica is most dangerous when she's cornered." Walking down the stairs, Nora's mind churned. She'd thought this was just a nightmare about an abusive rich woman and an unlucky waitress. Instead, it was fraud, federal agencies, and a collapsing empire. She stepped into a quiet hallway and called Leah. "Hey," her sister answered. "How'd it go?" "I'll explain everything later," Nora said. "But things are way bigger than I thought." Her voice shook despite her best efforts. Back on the main floor, the staff watched Nora descend, trying to read her face. Sonia rushed forward first. "What happened? Are you okay?" "I'm fine," Nora said. "I still have my job." The room exhaled. "Thank God," Sonia breathed, hugging her. "We were terrified. Half the team swore they'd walk if they fired you." The solidarity warmed Nora more than she could say. A month ago, no one even knew her name. "There's more," Nora admitted. "Christopher offered me a promotion, assistant manager." Sonia's jaw dropped. "You're joking. That's huge." "I'm not sure I should accept," Nora said quietly. "It puts me right in Veronica's crosshairs. The promotion meant better pay and a real shot at a career. It also meant stepping closer to Christopher's orbit and deeper into Veronica's rage. It wasn't just a job offer, it was a choice. Over the next few days, Lamont Montclair's energy shifted. Stories of Nora standing up to Veronica spread like gossip tends to, fast, dramatic, embellished. Suddenly, she wasn't just the new girl. She was the one who'd pushed back. Staff who'd tiptoed around the Langfords for years started walking a little taller. Jokes came easier, but empowerment came with a shadow. One afternoon, Grace drifted in for lunch and deliberately sat in Nora's section. "Heard about the promotion," Grace said, smiling in a way that wasn't friendly. "Lucky you!" "I'm still deciding," Nora replied evenly. "Are you?" Grace leaned closer. "Let me offer advice. Veronica doesn't forget, and she never forgives." "Whatever Christopher's dangling," Grace continued, "it's not worth making Veronica your enemy." "I haven't made an enemy of anyone," Nora said. "I'm just doing my job." "That's what they all say," Grace murmured, "right before she ruins them." That night, as Nora locked up, she noticed a black sedan parked across the street. It had been there when she started closing and still idled there now. When she headed toward the bus stop, its engine revved. Christopher's warning echoed in her head. Nora pulled out the card he'd given her, thumb hovering over the number. Before she could dial, Chef Marco appeared beside her, tossing her a look. "Grab your stuff! I'm driving you!" "You don't have to," Nora protested. "That car's been looping the block for an hour," Marco said. "I'm not letting you walk alone." In his beat-up Honda, she finally exhaled, until she saw the black sedan following, then turning away. "You're in deep trouble," Marco said bluntly, eyes on the road. "Serious trouble." "I know," Nora replied. "So what's the plan?" he asked. She thought of Leah, the bills, the scholarship dreams buried under survival. She weighed two paths: keep her head down and pray Veronica forgot her, or do the opposite. "I'm taking Christopher's offer," Nora said, "and then I'm going to help him bring her down." Marco glanced over, brows raised. "You sure?" "Not even a little," Nora admitted, "but hiding won't protect me. She already thinks I'm a threat. I might as well actually be one." He huffed. "You've got reckless courage, kid." When Nora got home, she saw 2 missed calls from Ethan. The last voicemail was tight with panic. "Call me. It's urgent." She dialed back. "Naomi, sorry, Nora. Someone broke into the restaurant." His voice shook. "What?" she whispered. "After closing." Security footage shows a woman in a hood going straight to the office, right to the filing cabinets. She was searching for something. She asked the night guard about your shifts, your address. Nora stared at the deadbolt on her apartment door, suddenly aware of how thin it really was. "I'm calling the police," Ethan said, "and Christopher, but you must be careful. Lock everything. Don't go anywhere alone for now." After hanging up, Nora sat in the dark living room, watching city light shadows crawl across the ceiling. Leah slept in the next room, oblivious. For the first time, Nora wondered how long she could keep her safe. She dialed the number on Christopher's card. "Donnelly Legal Group," a woman answered. "My name is Nora Blake. Christopher Langford told me to call if I was ever in danger." "One moment, please," the receptionist said, voice suddenly sharper. A man came on the line. "Miss Blake, this is Martin Donnelly. Mr. Langford briefed me on your situation. Tell me exactly what's happened." Nora walked him through everything: break-in, strange car, Grace's warning, and her growing sense of being hunted. When she finished, Martin was quiet for a beat. "All right, Nora. I'll be blunt. You're now a potential witness in a federal fraud case. That makes you valuable and vulnerable to people who don't care about your safety." "I'm arranging security for your building tonight," he said. "Mr. Langford will cover the cost. If needed, we'll move you and your sister to a safe location." "I can't afford." "You don't have to," he cut in. The reality slammed into her. A month ago, she just wanted tips and a paycheck. Now she had lawyers, bodyguards, and a wealthy criminal calculating how to shut her up. "What do I do?" Nora whispered. "Keep your head down," Martin said. "Stay alert. Answer only our calls and Christopher's. We're building a case. Veronica will face consequences. But these things move slow. Weeks, maybe months. Your job is staying alive long enough to testify." After the call, Nora sat in darkness, listening to Leah's faint snore through the thin wall. The girl who'd nervously walked into Lamont Montclair 4 weeks earlier felt like a stranger now. Soft, untested, naive. By morning, Nora had made her decision. She called Ethan and accepted the assistant manager role. "You're sure?" he asked. "I am," she said. "Veronica is going to explode when she hears." "Good," Nora replied. "Let her." Because if she was going to be a target anyway, she wanted it to matter. Her first week as assistant manager should have felt victorious. Instead, it was like tiptoeing through a field of hidden landmines with a blindfold on. She got a tiny office, a modest bump in salary, and responsibility for schedules, staff issues, and vendors. But the real prize was a bullseye painted across her back in Veronica's signature shade of rage. Veronica hadn't stepped inside Lamont Montclair since the disastrous dinner. But her presence lingered in tense phone calls Ethan answered, in high-profile guests suddenly canceling, in the way everyone stiffened whenever the front door chimed. "She's planning something," Sonia muttered during a lull between lunch and dinner. "You can taste it in the air." Nora felt it too, like the charged stillness before a lightning storm, when the sky is too quiet, too heavy. The strike hit on a Thursday night. Nora was in the wine cellar checking inventory when she heard a crash upstairs, shattering glass. A shout, the sudden pitch of voices flipping from relaxed to panicked. She bolted up the stairs. On the gleaming marble floor lay shards of a shattered bottle, a spreading pool of Bordeaux like spilled blood. She recognized the label, even destroyed. 12 grand of vintage wine bleeding into stone. In the center of the mess stood Veronica Langford, hand pressed to her chest, face arranged into horrified shock. "My God," she gasped. "I can't believe this happened. Ethan," she cried as the manager rushed over. "Mrs. Langford, what occurred?" Ethan asked, voice tight. "That girl," Veronica said, pointing straight at Nora. "I was just walking past when she came barreling down the hall with that bottle. She nearly knocked me over. It flew from her hands." Nora stared at her, stunned. "That's not true. I was downstairs the entire time. I never— Are you calling me a liar?" Veronica's voice rose, just loud enough for the nearby diners to hear. "I could have been seriously hurt." "Mrs. Langford, I was in the cellar doing inventory," Nora insisted. "I hadn't brought anything up yet." "Ethan," Veronica said, ignoring her, "this kind of incompetence is dangerous. That bottle could have smashed into my head." Grace appeared right on cue. "I saw everything," she announced. The girl was rushing, not watching where she was going. Veronica barely dodged in time. "That's a lie," Nora snapped, her control finally fraying. "Check the cameras. They'll show I never came upstairs." "The hallway cameras malfunctioned this afternoon," Veronica replied smoothly. "I told the evening manager. Apparently, no one bothered to fix them." Ice crawled through Nora's veins. No cameras, of course. Veronica had disabled the one thing that could prove she was lying. "There are other angles," Nora said, desperate. "The cellar cameras will show I never left with a bottle." "How interesting." Veronica purred. "You seem very familiar with our surveillance layout, Nora, almost like you planned something and wanted to avoid being seen." The implication hung in the air like smoke. Nora saw uncertainty flicker across a few faces, even in Ethan's eyes. This was Veronica's specialty, telling a story so plausible people wanted to believe it, even against their own eyes. "My office," Ethan said quietly to Nora. "Now." "But office now." As they walked away, Nora glanced toward the entrance and saw Christopher coming in. He took in the wreckage, Veronica's performance, Nora's face, and his expression darkened. Ethan's office felt smaller than usual. He sat behind his desk, fingers laced so tightly his knuckles whitened. Nora stayed standing, heart slamming against her ribs. "I need the truth," he said. "Were you carrying that bottle?" "No," Nora said. "I was in the cellar. I hadn't brought anything up. Can anyone corroborate? I was working alone. But Ethan, you know me. I wouldn't do something like—" The door opened. Christopher walked in, Veronica gliding behind him, her earlier hysteria now calcified into fury. "I want her fired," Veronica declared. "Immediately." "That's not your decision," Christopher said quietly. His tone was mild. His eyes were not. "She nearly injured me," Veronica insisted. "Destroyed a $12,000 bottle and then lied about it. How much more do you need?" "I need facts," Christopher replied. "Not dramatics." "Are you really defending her again?" Veronica demanded. "Your obsession with this waitress is humiliating," she continued. "Everyone's talking." "Let them," he said. "She attacked me at the dinner," Veronica snapped. "Now she's smashing property. You keep protecting her like she's—" She stopped, but the poison lingered. "Like she's what?" Christopher asked, voice dangerously quiet. "Like she matters more than your wife," Veronica finished. The silence after that was glacial. Nora wished she could vanish. This argument wasn't really about her, but she was the weapon being used. "I'll review the security footage personally," Christopher said at last. "Every camera in this building. Then we'll discuss what actually happened." "The tapes won't show anything," Veronica said confidently. "They malfunctioned. All of them." Christopher raised an eyebrow. What remarkably terrible timing. Something flickered across Veronica's expression. Uncertainty, maybe even fear. "What exactly are you implying?" she hissed. "That I find coincidences this convenient hard to believe," he answered. He turned to Ethan. "Put Nora on temporary leave during the investigation." "Paid leave," he added quickly, over Veronica's protest. "This is a staff matter. It'll be handled by company policy, not hysteria." "Christopher, you can't be serious," Veronica snapped. "This conversation is over," he replied. "Go home." Her look promised retaliation, but she left, Grace drifting after her with a glance Nora couldn't interpret. Sympathy? Triumph? Both? When they were gone, Christopher faced Nora. "You didn't drop that bottle." "No, sir," Nora said. "I know that," he replied, "but proving it will take time. Thankfully, there's a secondary system Veronica doesn't know exists. Installed 3 months ago, backed up off-site." Hope sparked in Nora's chest. "So there is footage?" "There should be," Christopher said, "but we have to move carefully. If she discovers it, she'll try to erase it." He pulled out his phone. "Martin, secure the backup security archives from the restaurant tonight. Everything." He ended the call and looked at Nora, eyes heavy with regret. "Go home. Don't answer the door unless it's my security team." I'll contact you when we have proof." Nora left through the back, feeling like a criminal. Marco waited in the alley, engine running. "Get in," he said. "No arguments." "What did you hear?" she asked, sliding into the passenger seat. "Enough," he said. "You look like you're about to pass out." Her phone buzzed nonstop on the drive. Worried texts from coworkers, a missed unknown call, 3 messages from Leah asking if she was okay. Nora texted her sister back first. "I'm fine. Be home soon. Love you." It was half true. At home, Leah met her at the door, eyes wide. "What happened? Sonia said you might get fired." "I'm not fired," Nora said. "Just suspended while they investigate something Veronica staged." "You're totally lying," Leah said, "and you're terrible at it." That night, sleep refused to come. Nora lay in the dark, replaying the scene over and over. Veronica's gasp, the staged accusation, Grace's perfectly timed backup story. It was a performance honed over years of manipulating rooms. Only this time, Christopher had another stage she didn't know about, a hidden camera feed on an external server. If it worked, if the angle was clear, if the file hadn't glitched, too many ifs for comfort. Her phone rang at 2 a.m. Christopher. "We have the footage," he said without preamble. "Exactly what I expected." Nora pushed herself upright. "What does it show?" Veronica entering the hallway, alone, bottle in hand. Christopher said. "She looks straight at the backup camera, the one she thought was off, then slams the bottle against the wall. After that, she waits for you to appear." Relief crashed through Nora so hard she felt dizzy. "So, I'm cleared." "You are," Christopher said, "but this proves something bigger. She's desperate enough to commit criminal acts just to frame you. That makes her infinitely more dangerous." "What happens now?" Nora asked. "Now, we hand this to the investigators," he replied. "Malicious property damage, false claims, deliberate setup, on top of financial crimes. Another nail in her coffin." After hanging up, Nora finally slept, though her dreams were full of shattered glass and narrow hallways that kept closing in around her. Freedom and danger now felt like 2 sides of the same coin. The next morning brought new chaos. 3 missed calls from Ethan, 2 from Sonia, 1 from Donnelly Law Firm. Nora called Martin first. "Someone tried to get into your building last night," he said. "Security intercepted them. We believe it was Grace." "What did she want?" Nora asked. "We're not sure," Martin said. "But Christopher's arranged for you and Leah to relocate to a secure apartment. A car will pick you up in an hour. Pack essentials only." "I can't just leave," Nora protested. "You can, and you will," Martin replied. "Veronica knows her empire is collapsing. That makes her unpredictable. Your safety is non-negotiable. This isn't optional, Nora." The black SUV arrived exactly on schedule. The driver, a serious man who introduced himself as working with Martin, loaded their bags and drove them across town to a high-rise with a guarded lobby and mirrored elevators. Inside, a fully furnished 2-bedroom apartment waited, stocked with groceries like someone had anticipated every need. Leah stared at the marble counters and floor-to-ceiling windows. "This is insane," she whispered. "We're living inside a streaming drama." "I know," Nora said. "What exactly have you gotten us into?" Leah asked, half scared, half impressed. The truth was, Nora didn't fully know. She'd wanted a job. Instead, she'd walked into white-collar war. That afternoon, 2 investigators arrived. Federal agents in dark suits, badges, discreet but unmistakable. They asked questions about every interaction Nora had ever had with Veronica. focusing heavily on the charity gala dinner and the hurried papers Veronica had shoved into her purse. "Did you see what was written?" the woman asked. "No," Nora said. "I only saw her stuffing documents away like she didn't want anyone to notice." "But you can testify that she looked anxious while doing so?" the agent pressed. "Yes," Nora said. "She was panicked." The agents traded a loaded look. "We're building a case against Veronica Langford," the male agent explained. "We believe she siphoned over $6 million from 3 charitable foundations. Your testimony will be crucial." $6 million. Nora's brain stuttered around the number. She'd been counting tips and coupons while Veronica had treated millions like loose change. "What do you need me to do?" she asked. "For now, stay safe," the woman said. "Eventually, you may testify before a grand jury. That could be weeks or months from now. When that time comes, we'll prepare you." After they left, Nora stood at the window, watching the city's constant motion. Somewhere out there, Veronica was still scheming. Somewhere out there, Grace was deciding which side to stay on. Somewhere out there, Christopher was dismantling his own marriage. 3 days later, the call came from a surprising number. Grace! She was crying so hard Nora could barely parse the words. "I need to talk," Grace sobbed. "I have information. About her. About everything." They met at a quiet downtown coffee shop. Grace looked wrecked. Mascara smudged, outfit wrinkled, hands trembling around her drink. "She turned on me," Grace said immediately. "I defended her for 12 years, lied for her, hurt people for her. And as soon as it got messy, she tried to pin everything on me," Grace continued. "She forged my name on documents, opened accounts in my name, made it look like I orchestrated the whole scam." Grace slid an envelope across the table. "So I made copies. Bank transfers, forged receipts, emails, texts, the whole ugly trail." Nora stared at the thick stack. "Why bring this to me?" "Because you're the only one who stood up to her and survived," Grace said hoarsely. "Because the lawyers need this. Because I want to do one decent thing before everything collapses." Inside the envelope were damning records, fake charity receipts, offshore transfer logs, casual messages about creative accounting that translated to outright theft. Nora called Martin immediately. "This is exactly what we've been waiting for," he said. "Stay put. I'll send someone." That evening, Christopher called. He sounded exhausted but relieved. "Grace's documents corroborate everything and reveal more. Combined with the security footage and financial audits, the prosecution's case is solid. We're right at the tipping point." "What happens now?" Nora asked. "The district attorney files charges," Christopher said. "Veronica gets arrested. Then comes the long fight. She'll throw everything she has at avoiding consequences, but this time she's cornered." "Will I be safe?" Nora asked quietly. "I've done everything I can to ensure that," Christopher replied. "Security stays until this is over. And Nora, thank you. Your integrity has kept a lot of people from staying silent." After the call, Nora sat with Leah on the plush couch, watching sunset bleed across the skyline. "Are you scared?" Leah asked. "Terrified," Nora admitted. "But doing the right thing is usually when fear shows up loudest." 2 days later, the news hit. Socialite Veronica Langford, wife of real estate magnate Christopher Langford, arrested on federal fraud and embezzlement charges. Every local outlet ran the headline. Social media exploded. Lamont Montclair's phone rang non-stop. Nora watched from the safe apartment, feeling oddly detached. 4 weeks earlier, she'd been just another server. Now she was a key witness in a case that would become dinner party legend. Ethan called to say she was officially reinstated. Sonia texted the staff group chat, spamming champagne emojis. Marco left a voicemail in a mix of English and Italian that sounded suspiciously like a proud uncle's speech. Christopher texted simply, "You were right to stand firm, thank you." But the story wasn't over. Veronica made bail within hours, $2 million posted like it was nothing. Once free, her lawyers immediately counterattacked, filing motions to suppress evidence and hinting at agenda-driven witnesses. Then came the nastiest move. They named Nora in a defamation countersuit. "It's a scare tactic," Martin assured her. "They're trying to frighten you into backing off. The suit is baseless. We'll get it tossed." "How bad is this going to get?" Nora asked. "They'll dig into your life," he said. "Every mistake, every bill, every online comment, they'll try to smear you, to make you wish you'd never opened your mouth." Nora thought of her mother, working herself into exhaustion to keep the lights on. Of Leah, who deserved better than a sister who bowed to bullies. Of every busser and host Veronica had humiliated. "Let them dig," she said. "I'm not backing down." That night, she dreamed of standing in a courtroom across from Veronica's icy stare. In the dream, she didn't flinch. She woke up knowing that in real life, she wouldn't either. Some fights were worth shaking over. The weeks after Veronica's arrest felt like watching a skyscraper collapse in slow motion. At Lamont Montclair, Nora returned as assistant manager, head high, shoulders steady. The restaurant felt lighter, like someone had finally opened a window. Staff laughed more. Marco's yelling softened into gruff affection. Guests remarked on how relaxed the atmosphere felt now. Outside those walls, though, Veronica's carefully constructed world was burning. The first major blow came from West Haven Children's Trust. Their audit revealed more than $2 million intended for youth programs had been siphoned into Veronica's personal accounts. The foundation's director held a tearful press conference, showing photos of kids who'd lost scholarships because the money disappeared. "These children trusted us," she said, voice breaking, "and we trusted her." The words, "Veronica Langford stole their futures," echoed through every broadcast. The second blow came from her social circle, which abandoned her with surgical precision. Invitations vanished. Messages went unanswered. Women once glued to her side now pretended to barely know her. Watching from afar, Nora expected to feel revenge satisfied. Mostly, she just felt strangely sad for someone who'd built a life on fear. The third blow was Christopher. Exactly 1 week after the arrest, he filed for divorce, citing emotional manipulation and years of abuse. His lawyer released a statement confirming he'd cooperated with investigators for months and had no part in the fraud. Grace came to the restaurant on a gray Tuesday, small and tired. She requested Nora's section. No entourage, no theatrics. "I testified before the grand jury yesterday," she said quietly. "Told them everything, every lie, every scam, every person she crushed." "That took courage," Nora said. "It took shame," Grace answered. "I should have done it years ago, before she hurt everyone else, before you had to be the one to finally tell her no." Grace slid another envelope across the table. "These are letters. Apologies to every staff member I watched her abuse. I know they won't fix anything, but I needed to write them." Later, Nora opened them in her office. Each note named specific incidents, acknowledged the damage, and asked for forgiveness. They were imperfect and late, but they were also honest. That had to count for something. That night, Ethan called a full staff meeting. He stood in front of them looking lighter, as if handing off a backpack of rocks he'd carried alone for years. "I owe you an apology," he began. "I let Veronica terrorize this team because I was scared of losing her business," Ethan admitted. "I chose revenue over human beings. That was wrong. We're done living like we're one rich woman's punching bag." "Mr. Langford has restructured management," he continued, "and given me authority to protect our staff. No guest, no matter how wealthy, is allowed to degrade anyone here. If they try, they leave." Applause broke out, loud and raw. "Also," Ethan said over the noise, "Nora Blake is being promoted to full manager effective immediately. She'll help lead this place with respect and dignity." The room erupted. Caleb whistled. Marina nearly tackled Nora in a hug. Later, alone in her modest little office, Nora let the reality sink in. 6 weeks ago, she'd worried about losing her waitressing job. Now she managed one of the city's most sought-after dining rooms, and she'd earned it. Her phone buzzed with a message from Christopher. "You earned every bit of this. Congratulations." "Thank you for believing me," she replied. His answer came quickly. "You saved yourself. I just made sure the world saw it." The preliminary hearing was set for an early autumn Thursday. Nora sat in the gallery between Martin and 2 security guards, reporters and curious onlookers filling every bench. Several of Veronica's former friends perched in the back, watching like vultures. Veronica walked in dressed like she was attending a board meeting rather than a hearing. Designer suit, perfect hair, flawless makeup. But something in her posture had changed. The arrogance had thinned into brittle defensiveness. Christopher sat across the room, calm, expression unreadable. When Veronica looked his way, desperation flashed across her features before she snapped the mask back into place. The prosecution began laying out their case with ruthless clarity. They presented the financial records, traced stolen funds, and introduced emails where Veronica essentially confessed to reallocating charity money. Board members testified about her manipulation. Grace gave a detailed insider account of how the scheme had functioned. Veronica's attorney tried poking holes, suggesting accounting errors, overzealous volunteers, miscommunications, but numbers don't care about spin. $6 million had vanished, and the trail led right to Veronica's accounts. During a recess, Nora stepped into the hallway for air. She found Grace at a window. "Think she'll see prison?" Grace asked quietly. "I don't know," Nora said. "That's the judge's call." "I hope she does," Grace murmured. "For justice, but part of me just feels sad." "She wasn't always like this," Grace said. "When I met her, she was magnetic, fun, generous. Somewhere along the line, power mattered more than people, or maybe she just stopped pretending to be kind." Back in court, the prosecution called Nora. She swore in and sat, aware of Veronica's stare like a physical weight. The prosecutor, an experienced woman named Andrea Morales, gave Nora a reassuring nod before asking the first question. "Miss Blake, describe your first interaction with Mrs. Langford." Nora spoke about the restaurant's fear, the impossible expectations, the public humiliations disguised as feedback. She recounted the dinner party, blocking Veronica's hand, and the papers she'd seen her hide. "At any point," Andrea asked, "did Mrs. Langford acknowledge wrongdoing or show remorse?" "No," Nora said. "She acted like hurting people was her right, like it entertained her." Veronica's attorney tried to rattle her, implying Nora exaggerated for attention, But after weeks of Veronica's cruelty, one aggressive lawyer seemed almost easy. Nora answered plainly, stuck to facts, and refused to be baited into anger. When she stepped down, Christopher met her eyes and nodded once, pride unmistakable. Whatever came next, trial, headlines, gossip. Nora Blake had already won the battle that mattered most. She'd refused to surrender her dignity, no matter the cost. Dignity has a price, and it's worth paying. If you've lived long enough to see fads come and go, you already know this. Money can buy comfort, but it can't buy character. Nora Blake walked into Lamont Montclair with tired feet and stubborn hope. Hope that a steady paycheck could keep the lights on and get her sister Leah back to college. The dining room looked like a palace. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and guests who treated a $12,000 bottle of wine like it was a Tuesday habit. But the real power wasn't the decor. It was Veronica Langford, the kind of woman who could freeze an entire room with a glance and ruin a working person with a single phone call. And yet, what Veronica didn't understand, what folks like us recognize right away, is that grief and responsibility can make a person unbendable. Nora had already survived the kind of losses that leave you staring at bills at midnight, measuring your life in grocery receipts and bus fare. So when Veronica tried to turn her into entertainment, criticizing her voice, her pace, the wrong side of a water refill, Nora didn't kneel. She didn't perform desperation for Veronica's amusement. She kept her hands steady, her voice calm, and her spine straight. Because dignity isn't something you're given. It's something you protect, even when it costs you. Courage is contagious, and community is fuel. Here's a truth older generations understand in their bones. A bully thrives when everyone keeps their head down. At first, the staff at Lamont Montclair treated Veronica like a storm system. Something you can't stop, only survive. Ethan warned Nora like he was reading an evacuation order. Sonia looked like she'd seen careers vanish overnight. Caleb cracked jokes, but his eyes said he was bracing for damage. Then Nora did something small that became enormous. She stayed steady, not loud, not reckless, steady. And that steadiness changed the room. Little by little, the staff started closing ranks around her. Sonia coaching, Caleb running interference, Chef Marco grumbling his approval like a protective uncle. Even the air shifted. People stood a little taller. They joked again. They remembered they were human beings, not props. That's how real change starts. Rarely with speeches, usually with one person refusing to be humiliated. When Nora finally said, "Ma'am, please don't put your hands on the staff," it wasn't just self-defense. It was permission. It told everyone watching, we don't have to accept this. And when Christopher Langford, Veronica's own husband, backed her up in front of high society witnesses, that permission spread like wildfire. Courage doesn't stay contained. It moves from one heart to another, and a community forms around it. That's what kept Nora from standing alone when the next blow came. The truth needs systems, not just strong people. A lot of us grew up believing that if you keep your head down and do your work, the truth will speak for itself. Life teaches you otherwise. The truth often needs receipts, sometimes literally. Veronica didn't just insult Nora, she escalated. She framed her for breaking that $12,000 bottle, conveniently when the hallway cameras malfunctioned. She tried to twist the story until it sounded believable enough to destroy Nora's reputation. That's the frightening part about power. It can rewrite reality if there's no proof. But notice what finally stopped Veronica's momentum: documentation, backup systems, and people willing to act. A secondary camera feed stored off-site. A lawyer who treated Nora like a real witness, not a disposable worker. Federal investigators who followed the money, millions of dollars siphoned from charities meant for children's programs and scholarships. Grace, trembling and ashamed, bringing copies of emails, transfers, and forged documents because she knew the truth had to be locked down where it couldn't be erased. This is a lesson worth carrying into any stage of life. Bravery matters, but so do protections that don't depend on bravery: policies, evidence, witnesses, records. When the truth is supported by systems, bullies lose their favorite weapon, fear, and suddenly their untouchable status looks a lot like a costume. The legacy you leave isn't your money, it's your standards. Nora didn't start out trying to be a hero. She was trying to survive, keep her sister in school, and hold on to a job that could change her life. But when she refused to be degraded, she didn't just protect herself. She raised the standard for everyone in that building. And maybe that's the real message for those of us 65 and older. The world doesn't always change because the powerful get kinder. Sometimes it changes because ordinary people decide, quietly and firmly, not anymore. Now I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever faced someone who tried to control you with money, status, or fear? And what did you do in that moment? Do you think Nora was right to stand her ground, even when it put her and her sister at risk? Or would you have chosen a safer path? Share your thoughts in the comments because your experiences can help someone else find their backbone today. If this story moved you, please hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next episode. More powerful stories are coming, and I want you with us.